Good morning, everyone, and welcome back from the weekend. Welcome to another session of the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I'm David Stevenson, your host, and I'm joined this morning by Matt Milligan. Matt, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Matt is the co-founder of Uhubs, and he'll be taking us through a presentation this morning about upskilling your team during lockdown. How you can continue with your team's development. So I will pass it over to Matt, who will intro us and then intro himself rather, and take us through a presentation. And I will open it up to questions at the end. So with that, Matt, great to have you.
Thanks, David. Yeah, appreciate it. And morning, everyone. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Weekends during lockdown don't really feel quite like weekends used to, but hope everyone's staying healthy. By way of intro, so I'm Matt Milligan. I'm the co-founder of Uhubs, and at Uhubs we help business leaders upskill and retain their talent through live masterclasses and one-to-one coaching, and that's all done remotely through our platform. So as you can imagine, it's been quite a busy time for us. Since lockdown was announced, we've really been proactive in helping our clients make the shift to distributed working, and there's been a lot of really interesting insights that we've learned, in particular from our users. So I'm going to share some of those insights with you all today, but the topic is really thinking about how we can use this time to really upskill our teams, and there's a kind of bigger purpose to this all, which David and I were alluding to before we went live, which is around how do we rebuild the economy. And I think upskilling our workforce is a really key part of that. So at Uhubs, we have a mission, and our mission is to upskill 1 billion people by 2030. And as I mentioned, this mission is more important than ever before, because we think it's going to require a monumental effort from all of us to really better equip our employees with the skills that they need, so that we can actually solve some of our biggest problems. And obviously our biggest problem right now is COVID-19, but there's going to be a number of challenges further down the line. Now, just very briefly, a little bit about us. We've been upskilling a global community of learners from some really innovative companies, large and small. So that's everything from tech scale-ups across Europe through to larger organizations. And the way in which we do it, we have a platform that identifies skills gaps within organizations, and then we connect those businesses to experts from our marketplace of coaches, and the coaches deliver masterclasses remotely to an audience of many employees, but then employees also get the chance to receive one-to-one coaching through the platform. Now, there's 3 things that I want to share with you today, and through delivering thousands of hours of remote live sessions the past couple of years, we've been engaging really heavily with the millennial Gen Z employee community in particular, and we've learned a lot, like we all have in the last 3 weeks, about how behavior is changing. But I'm going to share with you some insights in terms of what employees are really looking for and what they're valuing right now from workplace learning programs. And it really falls into 3 categories. So those categories are be human, be relevant, and be engaging. So we're going to start with be human. Now, I think it's fair to say that employees are facing more uncertainty now than ever before in our lifetimes. We've got an incredibly uncertain jobs market. We've got a lot of jobs at risk. Obviously, 1.4 million workers in the UK have been furloughed in the past 4 weeks. But even prior to COVID-19, a skills gap had opened up that was costing firms about 6.3 billion each year, and that's in the UK alone. So the skills gap was a massive challenge, and it was placing a lot of pressure, and has been placing a lot of pressure on employees to continuously refresh and update their skill sets. Now, when we think about being human, I think the first step in considering how you might do that for your people is showing them that you care really deeply. So, many of us as business leaders are making some really tough decisions right now, be it making redundancies or furloughing team members. And what we've seen from our employee community at Uhubs is that those who have had really positive experiences with their employers talk a lot about their respect for the honesty that's been shown. So I think just being upfront, being really honest with your team, and being as transparent as you can about the current situation and what the treatment of their job or the future of their job looks like, and their job security is going to be a kind of first step in showing that you care. I think a great way to show that you care deeply is to demonstrate that you're invested in your people. And now is as great an opportunity to do that as ever. And we believe at Uhubs that a really great way to demonstrate your investment is through providing learning and growth opportunities. And this is a really great way to foster that learning culture that gets spoken about so often, but is really hard to achieve. I think the final thing I'll say around being human is that the organizations that are being honest with their people and demonstrating that they're invested in them are really differentiating themselves right now in the marketplace. And there's certain employers that we're seeing in the market and who we're working with who are carving out really strong brands for themselves. And I think those are the brands and the companies that are going to be remembered when hopefully this is all over. And just a quote there from a kind of an entrepreneur that I really, really admire personally, Ben Horowitz. But I think that kind of mantra is more important now than ever. People, products, and profits, but in that order. I think the second tenet around being human is recognizing that now is a really great time for employees to upskill. The obvious reason is that most of us have a lot more time on our hands. It's not true for everyone, and I'll come on to talk about that in a moment. But we did some research with our employee community 10 days ago, and we actually found that of those in our community that have been furloughed, over 92% of them plan to use this time to upskill. So we've got a really captive audience at home now who are looking to use this time wisely to update and refresh skill sets. And I think the other thing worth bearing in mind is that all the old routines that we had pre-lockdown have now totally been thrown out the window. So there's far less competing with our attention. And this is a really unique opportunity for us all to use this time to upskill. I think the final thing I'd mention around being human is that it's super important to really know your staff. And this is where employee personas become crucial, because we may jump to the conclusion that if no one's commuting, everyone's at home, okay, great, they've got an additional 1 to 2 hours of time in their days now. But actually what we found is that really isn't the case, particularly for those who are working remotely now at home with children. All of a sudden they've had to become school teachers overnight. They've had to balance that with their 9 to 5. And actually a lot of employees are really struggling for time right now. So this is where, as a business leader, having an awareness of your staff and the types of personas that they sit in is super, super crucial. And why that's crucial is because all of your comms need to be made incredibly specifically and targeted towards those individual segments. And I show an example there. This is how we think about it at Uhubs. We go really deep on employee personas. We make sure that the interventions and the communications are targeted at the right employees at the right time. We don't want to put employees under an unnecessary pressure to upskill and feel like they have to, when actually they've got much bigger challenges going on at home. And I think the other thing worth bearing in mind is that anxiety was at an all-time high prior to COVID-19, and that trend has only been accelerated now. So in all of your communications with your team, when you're looking to roll out a remote learning program, it's really crucial to be aware of that anxiety factor. And there's ways in which you can bring that out in your wording. And any reassurance you can provide to your employees right now is a massive bonus to them. So that's being human. I think the next kind of key takeaway is it's so important right now to be relevant. Now, the reason I talk about relevance is that employees are totally overwhelmed right now with content. And since lockdown, there's been a massive rise in the amount of and the volume of content that's available online, much of which is free to access, but it's super overwhelming and hard to know how to get started. And what we found is that overwhelm tends to lead to stagnation with employees. So if you provide them with access to an online content library, they're sitting there, they're looking at a wealth of resources, so many videos, but they're really lacking direction. They don't know which skills are important, which skills should I even start trying to learn. So this is where it's really important to help your employees navigate what to learn. And what we've seen from our research in recent weeks is that employees are really looking to their employers to help them navigate this ecosystem. So one way in which you can do this is you can make it really clear from the top down as a business leader, what are the skills that are really valuable to your organization now and in the future? And therefore, which skills should your employees be investing in developing? And one way we do this at Uhubs is before we start working with a client, we actually conduct a skills mapping across the entire organization. So before we onboard a single employee onto the platform, we've got a real deep understanding of what the skills needs are for that organization, and therefore what the personal learning paths need to look like for each individual employee. And a great way to do this is to use data. I think there's a big lack of this in the industry, and this really boils down to making having a deep understanding of what of the future skills are going to be most relevant to your organization in the future. Which ones are you going to need to get ahead of your competitors now or post lockdown? And we actually found that in 2020, 82% of our users have indicated that they would immediately apply the skills that they had learned. And that really comes down to relevance, because if you're pushing employees in the right direction, pushing them towards skills that are relevant to their own career progression and the needs of the organization, you're going to see a massive boost in engagement. And there's just a selection of kind of 21st century skills and how we think about the difference between those hard in-demand skills and those human skills, which are more important now than ever. The final trend I wanted to share with you is be engaging. So we started off with being human. We started off with, we then moved on to being relevant. I think the final piece that I wanted to share with you this morning is really be engaging. And a key thing that we've learned from our community of employees is that they want to be inspired. Millennials and Gen Z in particular really want to learn from individuals that inspire them. We've had some really interesting examples of clients that we've been working with in recent months where actually even compliance-based training can actually be really engaging if it's delivered in the right way. And this is why at Uhubs, the approach we've taken to solving this challenge is by having all sessions led by experts who are in the trenches. So not trainers, but actually, if you've got a session on product, we'll get a really experienced head of product from a really innovative brand. And I think that really makes a key difference in driving engagement. So really try and inspire your people. And now I think is as great a time as any. Employees are really looking for inspiration. The second point I'd like to make is the live factor. So I think so much of what we attempt to push out to our employees is recorded. It's kind of flat content on a website, and science shows that we don't actually learn by watching videos online. I think by creating live learning experiences for your staff, and that can be led by an expert, it could also be led by you as the business leader. But really try and make learning within your organization a not to be missed spectacle. And we've tried to create this concept at Uhubs of FOMO, so fear of missing out. And it's not only about the delivery of live content, but it's also around keeping employees on their toes during the session. So one way that we've used successfully at Uhubs is we actually get the expert to engage directly with employees during the session using their first name. And now our engagement data shows that makes an incredible contribution to engagement rates throughout the session, because employees are waiting there on their toes for the expert to communicate with them directly. And it also leads to much higher turnout rates for sessions as well. because you've got this fear of missing out concept. So there we are, just 3 quick insights I wanted to share with you this morning. I think as we're thinking about upskilling our teams during lockdown, there's never been a better time to be doing it. I think it's an incredibly important topic. I think the skills that are going to be needed in the workforce post-lockdown are going to look slightly different to the skills that we perhaps valued before lockdown. But as you're thinking about how to upskill and engage your teams during this period, the biggest things that we've learned the last 3 weeks from our employee community is be human, be super relevant, make sure the content is aligned to the needs of your organization and aligned to the needs of your employees' own professional development, but then make it engaging. And I think I'll hand back over to David now. I'm going to break into some Q&A for the rest of the session.
Great, Matt, that's very kind, thank you. Thanks for that presentation, that was incredibly informative. And yeah, I'm sure the questions will start to filter through, but in the interim, maybe you could just give us a bit of sort of color on what exactly sort of courses does Uhubs offer? Are they tailored specifically to each institution, or? Yeah,
absolutely. We started, so if I just flick back, our 3 core verticals, if you like, revolve around growth. So when we refer to growth, we're talking about sales and marketing.
Yeah.
But sales and marketing techniques that have been used by some of the fastest growing companies in the world.
Okay.
So kind of frontier approaches to digital marketing and sales. The second vertical is product. So we've assembled a number of experts from across the tech landscape, focusing specifically around disruptive technologies. So blockchain, artificial intelligence. One of our experts, for example, is the head of machine learning at Oxford University.
Okay.
And then the third vertical is that kind of leadership and personal development. It's the one-to-one coaching side as well. So those are kind of our 3 initial verticals. But yeah, absolutely. I mentioned the use of data at the beginning. I think it's so crucial that we don't go down the path of a one-size-fits-all approach. So at Uhubs, we try to go really deep on what are the needs of the organization, what is the business strategy of this organization, where are they trying to get to, and therefore what types of skill sets are they going to need across their teams.
No, that makes sense. So there are master classes and sort of group learning modules, but equally there are one-to-one modules as well.
Exactly right. So typically the way we run it is the live master classes are 1 expert to many employees.
Yeah.
And what we provide on top of that is one-to-one coaching credits. So each employee within the organization can redeem a certain amount of sessions per month with an expert, and that could be specifically skills related. So you may attend a masterclass with a marketing expert and want to go deeper one-to-one with a specific challenge you have. But it also could be more career-based coaching. So you may have a challenge with your manager, or you may be feeling anxiety or stress about COVID and the furlough situation. You may want to speak to someone independent about how to handle the situation and deal with it better.
Great. And so it's a sort of subscription-based model that the company will sort of take a subscription, and then employees have the ability to access it when they have time. Exactly right.
So we operate at the moment on a per employee per month basis.
Okay.
Since it's worth noting, since lockdown was announced, we've been working really hard with a number of our clients to get creative about how we can help.
Yeah.
I think it's the first thing we want to do during this time. So I think normal pricing structures are out the window for the next few months. We're working really creatively with a number of companies to enable their teams to access the platform and access our experts.
Great, that's very kind of you. I also think it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it's a lot of businesses are in unusual situations, somewhat impaired cash flow wise, and I think obviously building a good relationship with the client now likely to have dividends when things return to normal, which I'm sure they will in the not too distant future. Can you give us some insights into what sort of courses are the most popular?
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of appetite right now on the growth side within digital marketing. I think digital marketing touches on so many assets of so many tenets of a business model today. So kind of, and it's always a moving target. It's constantly evolving. So we see a lot of demand for digital marketing related courses. We've got quite a lot coming up with clients on LinkedIn. I think marketing CPAs are down significantly at the moment. So if you are one of those few organizations that has cash available and you want to employ an aggressive growth strategy, I think now is a great time to do that. So a lot of sessions on LinkedIn marketing, social media marketing, digital marketing strategies, and that's a kind of key area. I think one thing that's interesting, we get quite a lot of requests as well for sessions which you probably wouldn't do a full course in, but you'd like to get a taste of. So I'll give you an example of that. We did a session quite recently for a client, which is how to deliver an amazing TEDx talk. So the topic was on storytelling and speaking, but you probably wouldn't do a month-long course in how to do a TEDx talk. But what we did is we had an expert who'd given a couple of TED Talks, and he talked about the format and the importance of delivery and different techniques that he used throughout the session. It was really, really powerful. But I'd say, yeah, digital marketing, storytelling is another huge area right now, because storytelling covers sales, marketing, it covers leadership. How do you tell stories to your team? So we've had storytellers from across the globe sharing, best practice for how to tell powerful stories. And we've got an expert in the States who writes for Huffington Post and has a very big following on Medium. And he actually shared some examples from kind of Hollywood and Disney Pixar of what kind of best practice looks like for telling stories, and then how you can apply that to business.
Great. Yes, I think that it's something that a lot of people are trying to understand how to navigate now. But clearly, the one needs to remain sensitive, but equally, and doesn't want to appear to be pushing too hard in this kind of environment, or what's the word I'm looking for here, profiteering from the crisis. But the reality is that it benefits everyone that the economy does keep functioning normally, and that we all have jobs and an economy to go back to when this is over. So there has to be a level of balance, and people are at home. So clearly people's consumption patterns are changing to reflect the fact that they're in a new space, but people are still working for the most part, those who can work from home at least. So there's a huge shift, I suppose, and understanding how to sensitively deal with that is something that employers need to train their employees in, so that they can effectively remain going concerns.
There is. And I mean, one thing I'd add to that, David, is we've seen a big rise from clients in demand for leadership programs. So we've actually, in recent weeks, been rolling out a remote leadership program. Now, I think the points you make there kind of support this, but the need for effective leadership is super important in businesses right now. A lot of businesses have made the switch overnight to distributed teams. And I think that requires a slightly different style of leadership. So we've been looking at a number of best practices across companies that have done it really well, like Basecamp, for example. And we've put that into a course, and we're helping roll that out now. I think now is really the time for leaders in businesses to step up more than ever.
Yes, I'd echo that. Certainly, sort of also, touch on a point that you made in the presentation, which is that if leaders, business owners and senior people within the organization are taking care of their employees will take care of their customers, and that is, it's very important that businesses are, being thoughtful and mindful of their employees and how they can, help foster, their mental health and equally support them during this difficult time, and they will in turn then support the customer base in the organization. We have a question here coming in from someone who doesn't have a name, I'm afraid, but asking, how do you see sales techniques altering in high value and technical sales? Location visits and face-to-face negotiation has always been the norm. Do you have a sense of how that might be changing? Have you got any insight from the organizations you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. One organization we're working with in particular have actually set up an initiative which is focused on remote selling. I think particularly, as you mentioned, that more consultative sell, in the absence of human contact, that can become far trickier. So absolutely, are clients looking at ways to make that shift? Absolutely. I think they're setting up specific initiatives to do just that. But actually, what we're finding is that even a lot of legacy businesses that we see in the market who rely upon what they think are face-to-face sales, and if you look at the statistics, I think most of the deals are still actually done through on the phone or on video calls. So I don't think that consultative sell is lost. I think it's just we've been forced now to use technology and more innovative approaches to close deals. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a sales expert on the platform who actually did 60 million in sales in the automotive industry. And we've done a couple of sessions with him on the platform, and a lot of the techniques that he teaches are just like fundamentals. And it doesn't matter whether you are selling to someone through a digital funnel process online, or whether you're sending them an email, or whether you're closing them on a call or in person. I think a lot of the skills are really transferable. But yeah, super interesting time, and we're seeing clients set up specific initiatives focused on how they can adapt their sales processes to move online.
Great, thanks, Matt. We have another. David Graydon asking a question here, saying, Matt, thank you, great session. Wondering, how do you go about identifying skills gaps, particularly in setting up for opportunities, and how the world will change around this?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, David. And it's something that we're continuously working on in recent weeks. I think what we've used historically is a lot of academic research and business research. So you look at the research that LinkedIn published 6 weeks ago on future work skills was really valuable. Harvard Business Review have published a lot of research on the topic as well. So I think you can start to use those as kind of North Stars. And then what it really requires is industry domain expertise. So you have to really understand your industry and what the needs are within your industry in order to innovate and get ahead. On the understanding skills side, the way in which we do it is it's survey based. So we conduct very quick surveys that are distributed to employees' mobile devices. They conduct the surveys on their mobile device. It doesn't take long, and the insights that we can gain from that, we can start to map out areas of strength versus weakness. But the most important part of this activity is where we sit down with business leaders. We look at what skills they currently have in the organization, and then we look at where they're trying to get to. And then we do a mapping of where they need to ramp up or develop entirely new skill sets, because quite often we find a client may be looking to make a move within an industry, which is part of their business strategy, but they've actually got no in-house capability in order to get there. I think the impact of COVID and the types of skills that we'll need as I mentioned, remote leadership as a specific example, but I think that, the style of leadership that's going to be required for remote or distributed teams is going to be slightly different. And I think the best way that we can do that is by getting experts on the platform who have really set the bar in terms of how to effectively lead and manage remote teams. As I mentioned, experts from companies like Basecamp who have been distributed since day one, and getting them to share the playbook, getting them to share their experiences of what works well. I think that's a really great way to close that gap and help share the knowledge.
Oh, great. Thanks, Matt. We have another question here from Jazz, asking, are your services and advice age-driven for recipients?
No, what's interesting is if you look at the data, within the next 10 years, millennials and Gen Z will be, I think, 84% or 85% of the workforce. So that for us, and I myself sit within that demographic as well. So I guess kind of the key driver for starting the business was some of the experiences that I'd had. And that's kind of been the reason why we focus most on that demographic. We also look as well at the retention statistics and the retention data. And it's actually that demographic that's most likely to leave. We've gone really deep with some of our clients on this, and we've actually found that it's millennial workers that have 3 to 5 years of experience that are most at risk of churning. And the retention challenge is a really big one for businesses, because they're investing a lot in finding talent. They're investing a lot in recruiting the right talent. They're then investing a lot in training and onboarding that talent. And if the talent doesn't stick around at the organization for long enough, then that business leader isn't necessarily seeing a return on their investment for that employee. So this retention problem is a really big one that we're trying to help business leaders solve. And we've really honed in on millennial Gen Z workers and what they're missing in the workplace. And we found that learning opportunities is a really big driver of retention. And it's been reflective of what we've seen within our community. It's been reflective of conversations we have with clients, heads of HR, heads of talent. The first question they get asked in final interviews is quite often, what's your training program? So I think that demographic, we're not exclusively focused on it, but it really is our sweet spot. So we're thinking about building content and building a value proposition that can help plug that gap for these millennial Gen Z workers. But of course, you think of the one-to-one coaching we service, senior leaders there. So it's not exclusive to that group.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Paul is asking a question here about, do you use an individual or organization maturity model to demonstrate over time the improvement in skills and capability?
Absolutely, yeah. We're actually trying to build out our own at the moment, and this is something that quite often in most organizations we've spoken to the last 18 months hasn't existed. So what we found that's been really interesting is that learning and development departments have quite often not had to justify the return on investment for that budget line. So it's interesting because it's almost like training budgets have been looked at as essential, and they're on the rise, but almost not integral. And what I mean by that is business leaders are quite often signing off increasing L&D budgets to heads of HR or heads of L&D, but then there's no justification at the end of the budgeting period for how much money they had and what they did with it and what the impact was. So we're actually looking at the moment at using our data and reporting to actually build out a version of our own. We really think that's something that's missing, if I'm honest. And yeah, it's been super interesting to see that. I think the other shift we've seen is business leaders starting to take a more hands-on approach to deciding what their learning strategy is within their organization. And I think it in part stems from that retention problem that I spoke about. But we're seeing now a lot of boardroom conversations being based around what's our skills gap, where are we missing capability, how do we plug that skills gap, and how much is it going to cost us. So it's not just, I think we're moving away from the world where it was just, okay, training's going to cost us X amount this year, we'll sign it off, we'll hand it over to HR. I think we're moving away from that world, which I think is positive. But I think the boardroom decision makers want to see metrics, they want to see ROI, and I think it's a great thing, and that's where it should be.
Great. No, thanks. We have another question here. I'm not sure that I entirely understand this question, Andrew. But he's a sports therapist looking to upgrade to having a team, wondering how practitioners will look in a few months. I don't know if that's something that Matt can speak to. I think it's very unclear what the market will look like. Hopefully, I miss my osteopath. I know that, but
yeah, sports therapist looking to upgrade to having a team. How will holistic and practitioners look in a few months? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it looks like an industry-specific question. A really interesting one, though. I mean, an example I will give, because we've got a couple of experts on the platform who are working at. They're working on building remote medical platforms. So we've got one expert from a company called YourMD. There's others out there on the market like Babylon who are doing a great job. And I think what would be interesting around the sports therapy side is to see if it goes the same way. And I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. If you can treat patients for cold and flu symptoms remotely, and prescribe them with a treatment, why can't we do remote physio or remote holistic, physio or physiotherapy remotely? The other thing as well worth mentioning is that people are now doing exercise classes and yoga fully remotely. So I think if you can do a full yoga class on Zoom, I think you should be able to do a physio session. So that's going to be a really interesting space. And I wonder actually if we'll see a breakout category leader in that space, because I don't know of any remote physio platforms.
Yes, no, that's interesting as well. I would also be interested in seeing how that evolves. Another question here coming in from Robin is asking, does Uhubs support individuals without a team? Is it only for organizations, or can individuals come and join and upskill as well via the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So although our main clients, if you like, are business clients, we've actually also got a community of learners around the world who are, as you say, individuals. So they pay for a monthly membership individually, and they get access to the platform and the experts and the one-to-one coaching as well. So yeah, absolutely, we do. We actually use that public community a lot to experiment on new session and course topics. But the session content is largely the same. It covers growth, product, and one-to-one coaching. But absolutely we do. And if you go to our website, there's actually a link on our website to request more information around becoming an individual member. But absolutely, and if you look at the difference with our public members, they are largely freelancers, creatives, individuals who don't have access to a learning and development function. So just as you say, I think the importance of community for those people now is huge, and we're seeing a massive increase in engagement on the platform from those users.
Great, that's good to know. Great. Well, I think we're sort of approaching the end of our session here. So Matt, I was thinking maybe if we could put that last slide up one more time, so I can just tell people how to get in touch with Uhubs. What the best way to do that is. Let's
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can drop myself an email, So I'm easy. I'm just Matt at Uhubs. You can check out our website, which is www.uhubs.co.uk. Any specific requests or any questions you've got, please feel free to reach out. Social media, my personal profile is at Milligram _7, but similarly you can find us as at Uhubs UK across all channels. So there should be enough options for everyone there to reach out. But feel free to drop me a note, any questions, or if you'd like to find out more information. But yeah, I mean, I think the final thing I'd say is we're super passionate about helping solve this problem collectively. We want to help our clients as much as we can, and we're really passionate about making sure that our workforce has the skills it needs to help rebuild this economy. Yeah, if you'd like to chat, reach out to me. I'd love to see how we can help you.
Great. Well, perfect. So the information is obviously on the slide here, but equally it's in the comment bar. So matt@uhubs.co.uk or the website is www.uhubs.co.uk, as Matt said. So reach out and see how Uhubs can help you. So Matt, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning. It's been a wonderful session. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care, everyone, and have a great week.